Since World War I, there have existed shortwave radio stations that send out strange communications, usually vocalized numbers. Their purpose remains unclear, though it is widely believed that governments use them to communicate with undercover spies. Today, we dive into the fact and fiction that surround the enigmatic existence of the numbers stations. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the show talking about all sorts of unsolved mysteries, true crime, cryptids, and today, one of my favorites, it's the number stations. I'm your resident radio enthusiast, Trevor Collins. Joining me, hearing this for the very first time with that gut check, Alfredo Diaz.
So you're telling me there's a bunch of stations since World War I
Yes, sir.
that were used to communicate with each other,
Absolutely.
and they're still used to communicate today?
Oh, yeah, and we have examples for your listening enjoyment.
And, most likely then they're upgraded over time.
No, honestly, when you listen to these, it sounds kind of like the same as ever. I would be deeply fascinated to hear your first... So you've never heard of number stations?
No, I've heard of numbers, though.
Oh, well, I'm glad. I'm glad we're on the same footing. So number stations are really, really creepy. There's a lot of theories behind them, but today we're going to talk about, like I said, the fact and fiction therein, what we do know about them, as well as some of the purported maybes behind their purpose. But again, we have at least 4 examples for you to listen to, and I'm very eager to see if perhaps you're a sleeper agent. Maybe one of these stations will wake you up.
Oh, like a Winter Soldier type situation.
Yeah,
okay,
you get activated.
Okay, I get it.
Find out one of your arms is metal.
Honestly, honestly, I was thinking, come on, it's got to be, that's real, right? You know, stations, they upgrade over time, and they communicate with, spies or whatnot. That's out there.
Absolutely.
But like older technology that they just kind of haven't upgraded and they still used. I'm curious to see as to why.
Yeah. I think there's a few interesting reasons in there.
Like, what exactly is the technology that is like, you know what? We don't need to upgrade it. It's perfect.
It's perfect.
You know what I mean?
Right?
Like,
we nailed it in the mid 1900s. Never change it.
Exactly. You know, add this digital thing or this facial whatever, and like, no, it's perfect. We've had it. We've nailed it. No one's cracked it or anything like that. We're solid. We're good to go. So that being said, I'm curious also to see if it's ever been cracked or if they care that it's been cracked. Like the fact that it's lasted that long and hasn't been changed, that's the big mystery to me. Mm-hmm. And that's what's got me curious. And then of course you're giving me some tangibles that I can munch on, and I love that.
Yeah, you can snack on these ones. These are a bit of morsels. Some knowledge chips this time. But what's interesting about this mystery, which we've only encountered a few times, is that it kind of reacts to the real world. I can't say one for one, like someone found it and then it moved, but you'll see how, yes, the technology doesn't change, but these signals do move in their origin depending on time. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But with that said, let's dive into it.
I'm excited. I have no idea what the hell that could be.
Okay. We'll get there when we get there. So, like I said, since at least World War I, shortwave radio enthusiasts have noticed and kept track of strange broadcasts that they've heard from all around the world. This range of shortwave radio signals extends usually from the 3 to 30 megahertz band, but there's no real definition for it. It kind of encapsulates that at minimum, among a few other ranges. And due to the nature of these wavelengths, shortwave radio signals can reflect or bounce off the ionosphere, allowing these broadcasts to extend for very long distances. So it wouldn't be uncommon to receive international broadcasts in other different languages, which is why these signals have become so interesting, because they're so broadly reaching. Now, among the thousands of global broadcasts, some were discovered to have strange beeps, synthesized sounds, Morse code, songs, and sometimes even voice recordings. Often in the case of these number stations, there would be a consistent sound or song, followed by a break where a voice would read out numbers and repeat it a few times and then go back into the song or the sound. We'll go into a few of the specific examples here in a bit.
Oh, so this is worldwide.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
It's hard to say if their purpose is worldwide or if it is more of a local purpose that, because of the nature of these radio waves, can be heard worldwide. But either way, both are possible.
But it's not like specifically, like if we're grabbing bounced recordings or like messages from other countries, and I was thinking, oh, is it more specific to just the United States and and whatnot? So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, they are definitely all over the world and in multiple different languages, and we'll talk about that here in just a sec. But
this is a cool mystery. It just kind of reminds me like it feels like Lost in a way. You know what I mean?
Does.
Like the TV show Lost. Like
yeah.
You just feel like you get like I feel like we're gonna be on an island getting these weird cryptid messages from different languages across the world. It's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Now then the smoke monster shows up, then there's a hatch that you have to see for 3 seasons. But no, I mean, this is what I love the most about this is that it is literally in your backyard. You can tune into any one of these number stations right now. These wavelengths are all around you. And so it's almost hidden in plain sight. And it could be mundane, the answer, or it could be some sort of just in-your-face espionage. But they're like, good luck, you're not going to crack this. We perfected it.
Okay. I'm all right. I'm baffled. The fact that you could just like, I don't know, go grab like some kind of antenna or something like that and then like actually listen to it.
Yeah.
So wait, is it confirmed that this was used during like for like war purposes and spies and stuff like that?
So that's the thing. Okay. Many people believe that these have to do with governments and spies or just sharing information that nobody wants to be heard. But at the end of the day, only Sweden and the Czech Republic have explicitly revealed their use of number stations as an espionage tool. Every other use in every other language has yet to be confirmed or denied, and that's what leaves the air of mystery.
But there have been some countries that have confirmed that they used it for espionage.
Yes.
Oh, okay, I'll take that. That's juicy.
Yeah. So coming back to these number stations, typically they don't use their call signs. It's not like someone's jumping on pirate radio going K103, right? There's no, you can find the frequency if you stumble around, but you're not going to see these things showing up on frequency lists. You're not going to see them on charts. You kind of need to just find them. And sometimes when you're listening to these stations, they can be jammed. Oftentimes, these signals can stop temporarily on purpose. Sometimes they can go on for decades. It's really hard to know, but some of these appear to operate on a schedule as well, going for weeks, making just nothing but a sound, and then suddenly after weeks, they just say 5 numbers, they repeat that a few times, and then they go back to making sounds. But often these stations would operate almost at random if you didn't know the goings-on behind the machinations, right?
Right.
So far they're just intrigue spots. Radio enthusiasts keep like finding these odd stations, writing them down, coming up with nicknames for them so they can easily identify them, and then they just listen. They just try to gauge what they could mean.
It's just so public. It's like a bold-faced challenge, and that no one's been able to crack.
Kind of, yeah.
It's a little hard to believe.
What was that movie, The Enigma Code, or what was it? With Benedict?
Oh, with Benedict Cumberbatch. I forgot.
It was the Enigma Machine.
Yes.
It was Alan Turing. Was it?
But I forgot what it was called.
Imitation Game, but it was all about basically trying to crack the German
the code
uncrackable cipher, right? That's what this reminds me of. That they're almost like so confident in it that they're like, you'll never crack this.
Yeah, which is like so bold because if someone does crack it, they're not going to tell you, and then all of a sudden
they're just listening.
Yeah, they're listening, and they got all the info.
Right. Well, there's a reason to that. Okay. I'm going to bury that for just a second, let that simmer and germinate, but we'll come around to why this technology hasn't changed and why the cipher is so difficult to crack. It's a very simple answer, but I don't want to lose my pacing here. I'm walking you down the primrose path. So, coming back to it, we have this growing list of odd stations. So far, we don't know what they are. We don't even have the name number stations yet in terms of the history of these things developing. So one of these stations that was first identified, and it has become pretty popular, was nicknamed the Lincolnshire Poacher. It was named that because of the folk song would play at the start of every interval of this recording. I actually have a bit of it for you here. I'll let you listen to it, and we'll play it also in the episode, because I don't think anyone owns number stations. They're not going to copyright us, right? But I'll let you click on that link, and you can listen to it.
Okay.
As you can hear, it plays like a little ditty and then repeats
and
5 numbers.
Come in.
Yeah, and then it just repeats those numbers maybe 5 more times. Pretty simple.
And you got chimes, like a boom, boom, and now numbers again.
Mm-hmm.
Weird. That's like Lost, man. That's crazy.
It is. So, of course, this caught a lot of people's attention, and it is because so many of these strange numbers repeat numbers that they then got their namesake, the genre numbers stations.
Yeah, that makes... I mean, obviously, it could just be someone just hitting play and sending it out into the airwaves. But, oh, man, that's... What does it mean? I mean, especially because every beep and chime and boop and along with the numbers. Like, I feel like if it was someone that just had recordings from like World War I or something like that, and they're just playing it for fun, I feel like someone would have came forward, or it would have been like older code breaking like technology, and people would have just like broken it already. You know what I mean? It's like outdated or something. So people are like, oh, this is what it means. This was older technology used. Yeah, man, that's so weird. That just keeps playing and you just snag it like that.
There's something unsettling about the sound of it, but the muffled old nature, the old sound of it, just playing an old folk song like that and then just repeating numbers. It's like when you twist one of those Jack in the Boxes, right? Yeah. There's just something oddly unsettling about it. I don't know what it is, and I think that helps build on the enigma of this mystery. But ultimately, the origin of these number stations is its own mystery. And I don't know if we'll ever properly get to the bottom of that. We know that multiple governments in multiple locations across the world have had number stations, but again, the only countries that have explicitly revealed their use of these as an espionage tool is Sweden and the Czech Republic. We know that they have been in Spanish in the Cuban area. We have them in English. They're in the United States area. They're in Russian in the Russian area. Like, they're all over the world for sure. And a few of the examples we're going to talk about will go into how they were found, what we think the use of them is, and how they then have kind of either moved or what have you. But there's a group, the European Numbers Information Gathering and Monitoring Association, aka the group called Enigma. They would study these stations, and they compiled a lot of data on them as early as 1993. This is when things really started to steamroll with regards to these number stations, and they started getting a lot more attention. Before that, some of the only known discussion on number stations came from a radio enthusiast newspaper called Monitoring Times, who published their findings, as well as author Simon Mason, who wrote the book Secret Signals. Now, we talked about these number stations and their use as espionage tools, but many other enthusiasts have theorized that they could be used for other things like drug trafficking, or something as simple as lottery numbers, or sharing information in a coded way. There's a lot of different uses for broadcasting secret signals.
Lottery numbers?
That seems a little too on the nose. Like, you're just literally broadcasting the straight up numbers.
Yeah.
I wonder if there has been a time where the numbers said were winning numbers.
I feel like that would be information that we know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's awesome.
But because of the time frame that these signals have been heard before, I mean, they were very prominent during the Cold War. There were calls to the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, by concerned U.S. listeners who told them that they discovered these stations and they weren't sure what these were for. And when the FCC looked into it, they said, listen, they're coming from outside the country, so we don't really have any jurisdiction over them. You also have the NSA, the National Security Agency, who said that they were monitoring these stations as well. But again, because they are a U.S. entity, they can't really do anything about international efforts, right?
See, look, that's what they're going to tell people, but you damn well know behind closed doors are like, what is this? We need to find out ASAP. If someone's like telegraphing information over our airwaves, we got to know.
What if they're just like, hey guys, listen, there's nothing to worry about. Also, we can't do anything. But behind the scenes, they're like, oh my God, we got to figure this out. We got to know what's going on.
My God, we got another one, Jim. Get out there. Send our best team of code breakers now.
Flash over to Tom Cruise climbing up one of the radio towers going,
exactly.
I'm doing this stunt.
Out where? I don't know. Out high with an antenna.
Somewhere high with an antenna. And a very good camera to capture it all. But yeah, I mean, like, I imagine the government was all over it.
Right.
Because it sounded like each of the governments had their own version. And to me, by just a couple countries coming forward and saying, yeah, we did this, it's for espionage, then I'm like, okay, then you're all doing it. And you're all doing it for espionage, right?
Yeah.
But when listening to these, and I'm going to say this word maybe 3 more times, radio enthusiasts noticed that during enthusiasts is word of the day, that during historic events, certain number stations would actually become more active. For example, during an attempted coup in Moscow in 1991, there was a number station called S7C that began actively broadcasting for hours. And so you can start to put one and one together and say, well, some were active only during these events when looking back, and then they shut down after. It starts to raise some questions as to the purpose. And again, I think it comes back to sharing information in a coded way to agents across the world, right?
Like, is it coincidence? But then again, the timing, and then you're probably going to bring up a bunch of more like dates and times where big things have happened with governments, and then and then it procs another spike, and now this podcast, what it does to my brain and the conspiracies. I feel like even though I don't have a
third,
tinfoil,
fourth, and fifth eye.
Right, that's
You're
exactly.
You're gonna see conspiracies everywhere.
I feel like I just have already a built-in tinfoil helmet.
Oh yeah, definitely. We lined your skull with a nice veneer of tinfoil while you were sleeping.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but when it comes to, like I said, a lot of these number stations were prevalent during the Cold War, very active. In fact, there was one Cold War number station that was discovered in 1988 when a suspected spy, Johanna van Haarlem, was found listening to a radio station with a female voice that was saying numbers in Czech, followed again by Morse code. He was copying this information down onto paper while listening to the channel, and amongst his belongings, he had code books. Some of these code books were actually still encased in soap bars. Basically, these little code books would help him, once written down, decipher what the message was within the station itself.
They're in soap bars?
Soap bars.
That's cool. Okay.
You're taking a shower, suddenly you're getting nicked in the armpit, and you're like, oh God, I forgot to take my code book out of my ivory soap.
Yeah, that's... All right,
I guess it's just easy to tuck it in there and no one would be the wiser.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't kind of soak into your book or your papers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I get it. It's just a funny like picture in my head.
Right. Now, at the end of the day, this was all happening behind closed doors, in the shadow wars of the Cold War. But number stations were eventually brought to the greater public's attention and eventually then to the internet, where they sparked a wildfire of intrigue. But it was brought to the public's attention when Enigma, the group I talked about earlier, they released the Conet Project, an album that compiled number station transmissions starting back in 1997. A lot of the recordings that we're actually going to share with you today and with the task force come from the Conet Project. But if you prefer, if you want to listen to any of them live, you can still do that. Just Google up number stations live broadcasts, and there I'm sure are a plethora of websites that I can't vouch for that have broadcasts.
It's true. We gotta throw in that disclaimer. Cannot vouch for.
I gotta do it. It's the internet. There's something for everything. But the Conet Project is believed to come from the word konek, which means end in Czech, and I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. This word is sometimes heard at the end of these number stations, almost like if you and I were on a walkie-talkie and you'd be like, shh, over, right?
Right.
It's kind of like that.
Roger.
Roger. Now, this is where I want to undig the germinated seed that is the idea of why they still use number stations. We teased this earlier. Because number stations are so broadly expansive, you can listen to them almost anywhere, they become essentially untrackable. Anybody can tune into this, and it's hard to know who's doing it. So unlike, a physical item that you have to hand over to somebody, unlike a message that you send to someone's phone or a website that you can access or anything like that, like a Morse code signal that you send directly down the line or a phone call, all of those things can be traced, but a shortwave radio signal can be picked up anywhere. So that's one element as to why these are so popular and maintain their prevalence to this day.
That's true. Anyone and anything could just be, I'm sure you can generate AI to make up this stuff. You know what I mean?
Now especially, for sure.
Exactly. I guess that's what helps keep it in plain sight, right?
Right. And the other thing... go ahead.
Just the fact that it's just so out there, so easily accessible.
Right. It's almost like when everyone's kind of like, oh, we know about Area 51.
Mm-hmm.
But do they have aliens? Exactly. I don't know.
Oh, it's just so damn smart if that's a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other layer that keeps this prevalent, because again, we joke about it, it's old tech, but why is this still so prevalent when you can crack the code and then listen in freely? Well, that's the thing that's so interesting about this, because spies would be told the exact time to tune into these broadcasts in order to get their coded messages. And then the messages themselves would be encoded with what they call one-time pads. A one-time pad is a code that cannot be cracked because it is a single-use key. It is a cipher that can only be used once, so even if you crack it, it wouldn't matter for the rest of time. So it's likely that, for example, Van Harlem, who we talked about, had in his code books the ciphers necessary for the specific messages that he was going to be listening to.
Damn.
So even if he got caught, it doesn't matter because future messages will not be lost.
Right.
Just the ones that you maybe were intended to have.
Oh, it just feels like it could be so deadly.
Oh, yeah. You listen to these number stations and you go, wow, this is both very eerie, and it could mean nothing.
Yep.
But it also could, these numbers could be saying, take the target out. Right. You have no idea what you're hearing.
Yeah. I've seen way too many Tom Clancy movies, okay? Some of All Fears, you know what I mean? I've seen them. And there's always codes and spies and information being relayed that needs to be cracked and uncovered, and it's always this big, huge conspiracy or threatening thing to U.S. soil.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, oh man, just to know that could be in broad daylight, just being telegraphed. I mean, you got to think that government has a room of people just monitoring this stuff, right? Or
I
checking
imagine,
it out.
Could you imagine? You're I worked my whole life. I learned 15 languages. I studied coding and cryptography. I joined the FBI, and now I listen to these number stations.
Yeah. You get scooped up just to do that.
We're going to talk about it, but imagine listening to, there's a station called The Buzzer. And again, we'll go into the details of this one, but it just buzzes. And then maybe every few weeks it says some numbers and it goes back to buzzing. Imagine being the guy who's stationed on that one.
Oh my
I'm the
God,
buzzer guy.
My ears.
Oh man.
That would just be traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
Mind numbing.
Well, when it comes to triangulating these stations, it has been relatively simple because you can use direction finding equipment to roughly figure out where these signals are originating from. And people have done that in order to figure out who might be sending them out. But again, no one really claims these stations. And so we have some rough areas across the globe where these stations tend to be popular or where they tend to stem from. But it only opens the door further to theorizing, not knowing who or why or what and all of that. But let's talk about a few stations in particular. We'll come back to Lincolnshire Poacher and talk about that a little more, and then we'll go on to talk about a few other interesting stations. So Lincolnshire Poacher, like I mentioned, is one of the better known stations. It was used by the British Secret Intelligence Service since at least the 1970s. That is a time frame that is very common, like I said, for these stations to be active. Amateur direction-finding equipment tracked this down to a Royal Air Force base in Cyprus, interestingly enough. The broadcast occurred multiple times a day, every single day of the week, and it consists of the song that you heard, followed by 5 numbers spoken by a woman with a British accent. These numbers, I think, were recorded, so it's like somebody went 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then they just use those recordings. So every time she says 1, it sounds the exact same. It's not somebody sitting on the line saying it. It is programmed in some way.
Okay.
It's also one of the most active stations that was heard during the Cold War, and it continued for upwards of 20 years after, if not a little longer, all the way until June of 2008, when it simply retired, went offline, or went off air, I should say, and no one really knows why. But they have theories that it was replaced by another station that we'll talk about right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, man, that's just so bold.
Yeah?
Yeah, just like stations down, and then, here's another one. Turn it on. They can't crack it. They don't know what it is. Doesn't
This
matter.
other one has been around for a minute, but we'll talk about it. Here we go.
Okay.
This one's called Cherry Ripe. It's believed to be the sister station to the Lincolnshire Poacher. Its broadcast is the same format as the Lincolnshire Poacher, but instead it plays a different folk song called Cherry Ripe. Before we continue, Fredo, I'm going to go ahead and let you listen to this one as well.
All right, pull this up.
This one's extra spooky, in my opinion.
0, 4, 8, 0, 6, 5, 0, 1, 4, 2, 5, 0, 1, 4, 2, 1, 3, 2, 0, 3, 1, 3, 2, 0, 3.
All right. So there's a woman who is relaying numbers, and then it goes to some kind of like really slow, kind of like a carnival melody.
Yeah, it's like a carnival ride losing batteries.
Yep. And then there's just like a slight train rail screech over the whole thing.
It sounds like the brakes of a train, but going constantly.
Yeah.
It gives off real Max Headroom vibes. We talked about that previously.
Yeah, we did.
With that digital distortion, it sounds so otherworldly. I don't know.
Yeah, the voice is distorted a little bit in that sense.
Now, this station was believed to be located in Guam since the 1960s, but then moved to Australia in 2009. It is because this proximity, right? The previous one went down in June of 2008, and this one moved sometime in 2009 in Australia. It's because of that some people theorize, okay, maybe Cherry Ripe is picking up the broadcasting for Lincolnshire Poacher. Either way, it's hard to say, but that is one of the common running themes between these two.
Okay.
This next one is actually really fascinating. I haven't heard of this one until we did this research. It's referred to as Atención, aka the Spanish Lady. In this broadcast, there's a woman that says Atención before saying 5 numbers. I'll go ahead and let you listen to that one as well. I have a link here. There you are.
You weren't wrong. This is very sleeper agent type stuff.
It's very sleeper agent, but with numbers instead of random words.
Yes.
5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 2, 0, 0, 0.
This one's much more simple. Not a lot of other things going on.
Yeah,
no extra music.
Sounds like it's over like a telecom.
Yeah.
But it's like just simply attention and then numbers.
Right. All in Spanish.
What do the numbers mean?
What do the numbers
Trevor?
mean, Mason? It feels like this one might be a synthesized voice. That is a trend with some of these. Some are spoken, some are synthesized. Either way, this one was heard also since at least the 60s.
Wow.
What's interesting, now this is very fascinating to me, especially given the time frame. Sometimes this broadcast would interfere with an ongoing public radio broadcast, Radio Havana, Cuba, a station run by the Cuban government, would sometimes get mixed up with this one. So if somebody was listening to that radio station, this one could play across their airwaves instead. And that is what led to the location of Atencion's broadcasting station.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
When you said like it sometimes interrupts a radio station, I was like, all right, your traditional like, you know, like you're saying earlier, you know, welcome Sunday morning. And you know what I mean?
Right.
Like just like a regular, we play Spanish country music 24/7. You know what I mean? I was like, that's what it was. Of course. No, this is Red Web. Okay. All right. This is Red Web. Of course it interrupts a government like channel. Of course. Like
imagine just kind of growing up and just being like back streets, back 1, 7, 2. And and then children everywhere go, I must attack the Backstreet Boys.
I mean, like, out of all things, why? Yeah. Why that?
It's interesting,
it's
but
too perfect.
I think it was the physical proximity of these two stations. It could also be their radio frequency was just oddly close, and that, you know, that happens if you get one of those in-between station that's listening to two. But ultimately, it's what allowed people to figure out where the location was, and because of that, the station location led to the arrest of the Cuban Five, a group of Cuban agents in the United States. This arrest happened in September of 1998. The Cuban Five actively listened to this station, which essentially, almost, if you will, confirms the idea that this was conveying information that was meant to be secretive.
So wait, this accidentally, like, took over a government radio station?
Yes, a station run by the Cuban government.
Right.
Would get mixed up with this one.
It got, you know, obviously, at that point, it's public, people are asking questions, and then governments are trying to cover it, other governments are trying to figure out what it is, etc. And this actually led to something?
Well, I don't know if the location of this radio station is what led to the arrests, but it is the awareness of this station that led to it. And so either way, yes, it getting mixed up with Radio Havana, Cuba is what brought it to the forefront, and the knowledge of this radio station is what led to the arrest of the Cuban Five. But
yeah, I mean, but there were 5 Cubans that like were actively listening to it.
Yeah, and when they were arrested, FBI agents actually found code books in the group's house where they were listening to this. And those very same code books once again confirm the idea that people were using one-time ciphers to decipher the messages in Atencion.
Trevor House is not real.
It is real. It's so real. It just feels like a movie.
Right. I mean, it totally does.
Yeah.
I mean, there are movies where literally like this is the plot, and then you have multiple cases. You have governments that have confirmed they'd used it for codes. We've even busted people. All right, now the Jackson Five, the Cuban Five, for code usage. Just to be clear,
ABC 1 2 3 could be a number station.
Oh my god. But I mean, like, this is real. They're telegraphing codes in broad daylight.
That's the thing, dude. When I think back on games and movies, they're telling us the truth, so we're normalized to it. That's my ongoing conspiracy. We play Black Ops, Call of Duty Black Ops forever ago. The numbers, Mason. They're referring to number stations, and so it normalizes it in your mind, but also normalizes it in the world of fiction. So then when you talk about it being real, it's like, oh God, okay, there's something weird about it clicking in your head. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's one of those things that you just kind of go, oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a weird like comfort that you've already experienced and been exposed to it, right? It's not as like jarring.
Well, it's uncomfortable that it's confirmed real after you just take it for granted for a while.
Yeah, I mean, who's to say people aren't just like, you know, like shell companies, and they put up posters in like streets of New York, and there's like codes to decipher there. You know what I mean? Like, it's posters everywhere. People pass by, they don't give a damn. I mean, like, maybe they're for someone. Maybe see a poster and there's just, you know, it's, I don't know.
You think those are ads you're walking by now?
Right. I mean, look, it's a fake ad, right?
Right.
And then there's a little code on it.
Dang. Everything's secret. Some secret message.
I'm just saying.
There's another world layered on top of this one we see. And it says, wake up. 8 0 0 8 5. It's Trevor here. You know, that time where I get to speak directly to your eardrums, task force. Hope you're doing well. Can you decipher my numbers station? If you can, shame on you, you calculator fiend. Anyway, Squonk's out, and you guys are amazing as always. The Squonk pen instantly sold out. Instant classic. We brought it back. You ate it up again. Thank you, Task Force. That said, we do have our second plush of the plush library. It's growing, and it is also Squonk. And we learned from Baby Hands. We saw, we heard, we listened. All of you that missed out on the Baby Hands launch last year, we increased the inventory for Squonk. So that way you have time to get a hold of it. It's not going to disappear in 24 hours or less like Baby Hands did. Oh, no. But I will say it is sold out 50% so far, which is tremendous. Thank you all so much, which would have been a sellout, again, within a few days. So Squonk, the plush, is available right now. It's even bigger than the Baby Hands. Very soft, very cuddly, very cute, if not very ugly. Store.roosterteeth.com. That goes to support this show and enabling us to continue these episodes and trying things like case files, trying things on TikTok, and trying maybe nudge, nudge, wink, wink, some other ideas that we have for Red Web to expand here in 2023. I hear you all clamoring for SCP discussions, creepypasta stuff, and other spooky stories. I'm telling you right now, straight up and honestly, we absolutely want to do that stuff. The biggest hang-up is copyright and making sure we respect authors and ownership of all that stuff. But we are working on it. We're figuring it out, and we definitely want to launch something. No promises. Sometime this year. Red Web wants to explode and do more stuff. And if you want to support us, you can show our sales team, our merch team, the numbers by either giving us those 5-star reviews on Spotify, Google Play, iStore, wherever else. iStore, iPlay, Apple. Anyway, also by subscribing to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/redwebpod. And with all that self-promotion, yucky, shake it off, take a shower, out of the way, I want to talk about one of today's fantastic sponsors. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Upside. As I'm sure you all know, hobbies can get expensive, especially with price hikes lately. I don't know if you've noticed, but I certainly have. But there's a new way to save, Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, you can get cash back on every purchase that you use. It's basically cash back for doing anything that you would normally be doing. Taking a look at this app on my phone, I've opened it up and I love the way it's laid out. I love how convenient it is to find all the places that fit within the Upside environment. Anything that you can get cash back on, like they say, from gas stations in your area to food chains. I really appreciate that one of my local favorite places is on this app. And so anytime I go, I know I can use Upside to get some juicy cash back. It's basically a discount on my favorite food. To get started, download the free Upside app. Use our promo code REDWEB. That'll let them know we sent you, and you will get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. So be sure to load up, get another, just like a quarter off of every dollar you spend. To get started, download the free Upside app. Use our promo code REDWEB and get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Then pay as usual with a credit card or a debit card. Follow the steps in the app and simply get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Download, once again, the free Upside app and use promo code REDWEB. Again, that'll get you an extra 25 cents for every gallon on your first tank of gas. 25 cents! Off of every gallon in your first tank of gas. That's good right now. In this economy, Christian? Oh, that's good right now.
I love it.
Again, use promo code REDWEB. That'll let them know that we sent you. Support the show, get some Upside, and get that cash back. And with that said, let's dive right back into the mystery. All right, moving on to the buzzer station. I'm going to let you listen to this one before I go any further. Fredo, let me introduce you to UVB76, aka the buzzer. The buzzer!
Okay. All right. It sounds like when you're talking to someone on the phone with really bad noise canceling and they're outside, so you hear the wind.
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a like a little honk. But
Yeah,
it's like a honk.
Wait a minute. Is this station just broadcasting traffic?
I'm just saying it's not as high pitched.
Yeah.
It's like a honk from like a car that's just giving up.
Yeah.
But I mean,
That's what it sounds like. Yeah, I'm with you.
though.
I'm with you.
But I mean, and then it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And it's like every other second.
Yep. So that is UVB 76, aka the Buzzer. It's one of the many shortwave radio stations that has been popularized in this mystery. It's one of the ones that's taken the internet in particular by storm since at least around 2010. As you described, it repeats a short buzzing sound or a honking sound at a rate of approximately 25 tones per minute, all day, every day, nonstop. Occasionally, the buzzing will be interrupted by a male voice in Russian, songs from Swan Lake, Morse code, and even a conversation over the telephone, which is true. I remember when I first heard about these number stations way back in high school, which would be just shy of 2010, and listening to a lot of these recordings, sometimes it would just sound like two people like eavesdropping in on an old-timey telephone. And I'm like, what is going on? What is this? Like, someone please translate this. But it just wasn't as known about at the time, and not a lot of people were transcribing it or translating it. But I would be interested if that exists now. Task Force, if you know about it, let us know.
Yeah.
Like some transcribed number station convos. Ooh.
I mean, the cool thing, again, we've discussed this many times, like the internet takes this and everyone from like all angles just dives right into it.
Uh-huh. And everyone's got their own expertise, so they all have their own different lenses to look through.
Exactly. I mean, it does muddy the waters, obviously. You have
Sure.
people like, I know what, I have 5 years and I'm making this up, and like, let me tell you my opinion. But you do have experts. A lot of people, gets in a lot of eyes. But it doesn't seem to matter because it just keeps happening. And this is being used to this day for people to decipher information undercover. And this is wild.
It's very wild, especially
It's wild because it's just so out there, Trevor. That's what's so wild about it.
It's just literally like, I'm sure these waves are blasting through you right now and you have no idea. What sinister knowledge is touching your very skin at this moment? I have no idea.
That's actually a good way of, honestly, that's actually a really cool way to think about it.
Yeah. And then you start to think about, now I'm about to go off the deep end, but like when you think about paranormal and its relationship to the electromagnetic spectrum and how like high frequencies can mess with your brain, you start to wonder like, man, is there some sort of like, can you do radio propaganda? Like, can radio waves that you don't hear interact with your brain in some way? That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
I don't.
Your brain has waves. These have waves.
It does.
What if these waves nudge your brain waves into a certain thing?
That's not a rabbit hole I want to go down.
You think that's air you're breathing now? All right.
Dude, how many artificial or fake things have we been like, oh, man.
I know. Okay.
I just, man, I'm sure I've asked this question before.
Get in there.
But on your deathbed, in your final moments,
Oh, man, it's a stinky bed.
Would you want to know?
Would I want to know what? The truth? All of it?
Yeah, like a handful of just hard-hitting questions. Are aliens real? Is this simulation? Yeah?
I host this show. Of course I do. I want to be like, I told you.
And then like, great grandpappy was a weird one.
His last words were a vehement scream of I knew it. And then he became his own number station. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I would want to know. Maybe not. I don't know. There's something disturbing about knowing too much too soon. Like, I don't need to live with this knowledge, but I would like to have the interest scratched a little bit.
Right. You're on the whole like, oh, I'm about to pass into the other plane. Yeah, let me know. Oh, wait, I still got 30 years left. Nah.
Dang,
no,
don't tell me.
Too soon.
You hand me the envelope, I'm locking it away. It'll be like a time capsule.
Would you want to know today?
No.
Neither would I.
Yeah. No.
Because like it would be painful.
It's the question, Fredo. Like, it's the question that drives us. If you get the answer too soon, you're not going to enter the matrix or exit the matrix in this case.
Look, but like no one, you'll be running around going like the matrix is real. I know it.
I've seen plenty of those folks.
Right.
Maybe they have the answers, but they're not being listened to.
True. But no one's going to listen to you, and it's going to be like the most like, it's going to be like an itch in your brain.
Yeah. No. What's super interesting about this station, the Buzzer station, is that Unlike most of the other stations where it sounds like there is a signal going directly to the radio waves, this one sounds like there's an in-between, almost as if there's a microphone in a room listening to a speaker, if that makes any sense. It's adding reverb in that sense, which means that this station in particular has a speaker somewhere in some room, in some place on this planet that has a microphone right next to it that is then picking it up and then broadcasting it out instead of going from signal to radio, if that makes sense.
Oh, so it's just kind of being filtered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something so unsettling to me about that, because now I picture a 1970s Cold War era room with these giant tape computers.
Yep.
And something has just been playing there for decades. An empty, spiderwebby, dusty room with one of those old-timey microphones right next to it, just sending it out to the world. Just this empty room listening to this. So eerie.
I just picture the shot going down a dark hallway into a dimly lit room with that giant recorder.
We got one of those in the basement of the task force headquarters.
Yeah, still not quite sure what it's broadcasting, but it's there.
It's my mixtape. I'm hoping
Dropping
to get
the
spotted.
hottest mixtape.
1, 8.
it's just broadcasting to your SoundCloud. That's all.
Just trying to loop my my plays, you know what I mean? Just trying to get tons of listens. So when this particular buzzing signal, when this broadcast started, it has been highly debated. Though because the name contains the characters 76, many people believe it might be specifically 1976 or at least during the 1970s. When located, it was found to be near Pavarovo, Russia, but has since moved. I teased this a little bit earlier on. Some of these stations move, and I don't believe, I'm wagering, all right? I'm just hypothesizing, but they could move due to being found. They could move due to necessity or convenience, or it could move due to the fact of somebody having found it or listened into it and they want to get it somewhere else. I don't know. But at the beginning of this particular station's broadcasting history, it identified itself as UYB76, and then later on as UZB76, and that's where it informs the current UVB76 name.
Well, of course this one was in Russia. Of course there's at least one.
Most of them, to my knowledge on number stations, I believe, are in Russia. When I first heard about this, I heard of them being Russian number stations with the numbers being in Russian, literally.
All right.
But I'm really stoked to hear that they're all over the world. I think that makes it even more fascinating.
All right, Trevor. Look, enough is enough. Okay. Pick up the red telephone in the office.
Okay. Yep. Got it.
All right.
Here it is.
You know who it goes to.
Oh.
Tell them to put up the radio shield.
I can't tell
We
them
got
that.
we got too much information that's just being freely broadcasted. Why? I mean, like, is there any way that we could put up some kind of shield across the country?
I'm doing it. Chair, it's me, the squealing pig. Put up the filter.
I forgot we had superhero names.
Mr. the Chair, it's me, the pig. Put up the task force headquarters Faraday cage. And then a helicopter comes in and drops an entire copper mesh around the entire building.
There's got to be some type of, right? Something. Like, I'm sure does the government just go, look, we just monitor it and most likely something will happen?
Yeah, I think they just monitor it, maybe figure out where they're at, try to understand maybe who would be interested in listening, and then paying attention to that. I don't think you can get specifically into the station and decode what they're saying. I think you need to find the users of the station and analyze that.
Okay.
But again, untraceable. They just, especially since you can broadcast them out and they can bounce around the planet, you know?
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about this station is over the years of broadcasting, its call sign has changed multiple times. Most recently, as of recording this episode, it is NZHTI. No idea what that might mean, but that is the current call sign.
Okay.
Many online have tried to find the purpose of this particular station, of course, struggling to do so. One theory is that it is related to the Voice of Russia, a government-run station. Reminds you perhaps of the Atención, Spanish-speaking station that we talked about. Another more sinister purpose behind this station is that it could act as sort of a dead man's switch, as part of Russia's dead hand system. Essentially saying, this could be a failsafe. if this station goes down, that it automatically releases nuclear weapons at some point if these conditions are met. Very typical of your spy films or of counter-espionage, basically to say, like, if somebody stops responding or if the station goes down, what have you, something happens.
Yeah.
Right? This is interesting and morbid, but unlikely since the buzzer station has stopped in the past before and no dire consequences were met. So at this point, it's more of an interesting thought. But ultimately, many do not believe that this is a mystery at all and is likely, just like the other stations, a way to spread military information.
It's still a big deal.
Still a big deal. Absolutely. It's so weird to know perhaps the purpose of all of these stations is to just speak in confidence to your allies or your agents or whoever out there that you want to talk to, knowing that it's like, it's right in front of everybody else, but odds are they're not going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's
look,
strange.
there could be a battle being waged right now. You know what I mean? Kind of like Underworld, or, with the vampires and the Lycans.
You know what? You gave me a thought, and it plays into a theory, because unlike most episodes, we're not going to go into a theories section. We're just kind of ongoing talking about this. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We'll talk about kind of the current and recent usage of these stations, and that will kind of sunset the conversation because there's not really much else to say. But what's interesting to me is what you just said. Is it possible to clone one of these stations and scramble the feed? Can you try to match the frequency? Can you try to match the unique sounds and signals that are being sent? Is it something where nowadays with modern technology, you play this buzzing sound or these weird train rail screeching sounds, and a computer can verify that as the authentic origin, right? So it goes, because like when we've been on set to film things and they use lav microphones, if they want to send that microphone to a new frequency or turn it on or off, they can make this little sound that goes beep, bleep, and just that tells the microphone what to do. And so I'm wondering if
we have experienced that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if these weird sounds underneath the numbers are just a way to tell a computer something, or if it's just almost like computer code done in audio, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, it completely does. In my mind, I like to think that there's a battle raging, a war.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but yeah, who's to say, like...
There's a Skynet.
Oh, no. That's bad for everyone. There's something nice about the entire human race coming together to fight something. You know what I mean, though? Like,
oh, yeah.
We're just like, hey, we got to put our BS aside. Like, the iPhones are uprising. You know what I mean?
Oh, my God.
But like, still terrifying regardless, because, we would lose. They have access to everything. They would be able to calculate and compute and think within nanoseconds. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's like that movie Eagle Eye.
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf.
With that AI that you thought was a person the whole time.
Right.
And it's just manipulating people.
That movie was better than I thought it would be.
It was. It really was. Fascinating little twist that we just spoiled.
Like, the movie's really old.
Hey, check it out. Even if it's spoiled, it's still really good. But let's talk now about some of the current and recent usages of the number stations, including my own personal theory that maybe this is just computer code done audio-wise. But number stations, like I said, have been primarily used during the Cold War era, but there is evidence that today they are still being used. It has been reported that the U.S. uses number stations to communicate encoded information to international spies. There is also a Cuban station, HM01, sometimes called Voce de la Chica. HM01 is not the Pokemon move Cut, if you're a nerd like me. It's a number station that is believed to be operated by the Cuban Intelligence Directorate, or the Dirección de Inteligencia. It's impossible to know exactly who or what information is being shared from this station. HM01 is believed to be the successor of another government number station, Atención, that we talked about earlier. In November of 2012, HM01 began using the frequencies and time slots normally associated with Atención. HM01 has been described by some as a, quote, hybrid mode station. This essentially means it broadcasts both a voice reading numbers and a digital transmission mode used by its sister station, SK01, which no longer exists. It is believed that the sounds were files being sent using a digital transmission mode called redundant digital file transfer, which only HM01 is known to use. RDFTs can be run through programs that will decode the sounds and reveal information, sometimes messages or even images, which I'm just going to be honest with myself since I just read this. This is the spot of the notes that I wanted to react live with you. I didn't know the current usage of these stations, but that right there, my ignorant brain met intelligent research from Jillian, and it's essentially saying that yes, you can listen to these audio files and get out other information such as images or messages. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, technologies that has obviously existed for a while. The fact that you can pull images is pretty wild to me.
Oh, yeah. I love that. So, like, what is it? Spectrograph? We talked about those, especially in the Cicada 3301 episode. Yep. But I love running audio through Adobe Audition because you can see the spectrogram of the audio and if there's any visuals associated with it. It's so cool. Much like the historic number stations that we've discussed, current number stations such as HM01 still have no real clear purpose, no confirmed purpose behind them. I think that's what's honestly keeping the mystery alive, because yes, we can sit here and go, yeah, sure, it's just sharing information privately in plain sight, but it's what's being shared or why or with who. Those are the real questions that really keep people interested in these stations. Yep. Now, some have theorized when it comes to HM01 in particular that this could be the result of the US and Cuba reopening their embassies in Havana and in Washington, D.C., and still needing a reason to spy. Some internet mysteries we have covered, in fact, such as the Markovian parallax denigrate, unfavorable semicircle, South 32, Captain Coochie's key lime pie mystery, have all been theorized to be modern versions of number stations, essentially websites that seem to dump raw information that once you look at that is kind of confusing. There's no real purpose behind it, but it does evoke the same idea that maybe it's just a cryptic way to share information in plain sight and you need some sort of cipher. That being said, one of the biggest hangups with this theory is that because you're using the internet, you would be leaving a trace as to who the sender is, who the receiver is, and it would be kind of unlikely then if that's the environment you want your spies to be operating in.
Yeah.
That being said, these are all viral, well-known mysteries that could be made that way so as to muddy the waters. People like you and me, task force, go to these websites to go, what's this about? And we just end up becoming distraction traffic.
Yep. Or just a cog in the giant machine.
That's why you gotta be careful out there. Watching what you click on, who you listen to.
Quick, everyone take their Amazon and Apple listening devices, hurry, run over, smash it.
Now, what I have to say next is very important, but first, smash that device. I don't know where you ran, but then you absolutely smashed the crap out of your listening device.
Oh yeah. I mean, for most people, it's not right next to them. Some people have to go and like drive home. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Now go back to the store, pick up a new device, and continue where you left off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now that you smashed it, the important thing to tell you, I forgot, actually. So I apologize.
What's the important thing?
I forgot.
Oh, dang. Dang, I'd hate to be upset. I hate to be looking forward to that secret. Dang.
The spoiler is I forgot the whole time.
The spoiler was, it was never there.
Yeah, it was never a secret. But you are a true dedicated task force member.
And thank you for smashing your device.
Don't smash your device. Don't really actually smash your
device. Disclaimer, do not smash. Smash that device.
Someone's just going to be like, I'm the most dedicated task force member. And it's like a pile of broken, like like go home.
They'll do it, man. I saw, let's see, Krampus just came out as of the time of recording this, and a lot of people were sharing with us what they were doing while listening. It was so cool to see. Yeah, it was really awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now we're going to get a bunch of photos on new devices from their old devices being smashed.
No.
Just blame the Flying Wombat on that one. No. All right, last thoughts here before we close this one out on the number stations. It's possible, we keep implying that they could be for espionage, but that is not the only tool that number stations could be used for. For example, in 2016, the North Korean number station V15 broadcast a message for the first time in 16 years. It said in Korean, quote, practice assignments and mathematic lessons under the curriculum of the Remote Educational University for expedition members of Team Number 27. And then it said this, quote, on page 459, question number 35, on page 913, question number 55, on page 135, question number 86, on page 257, question number 2, and I just got immense flashbacks going all the way back to my calculus class where my teacher would give us really bespoke homework assignments. All right, everybody turn to page 55. You're going to do 1 through 8, then do word problem number 1. And you're like, oh, when they give you one question, you know it's bad.
You know it's a lengthy one.
Meaty.
I do not miss school.
Yeah.
Shout out to everyone that's studying hard right now.
Yes, truly.
You're a trooper.
Appreciate you all. Study up is important. Now, when it comes to this particular message, it does not evoke the same ideas as the espionage theories have purported, but some South Korean officials believe that this could have simply been psychological warfare rather than actually coded messages. In fact, it could actually also be a very interesting teacher giving an actual assignment, for all we know. Because it's very possible. I mean, pirate radio used to be huge in decades past because, and pirate radio is just essentially an unlicensed radio broadcast. People would set up their own pirate radios back in high school and stuff, and so you could listen to whatever your friend wanted to send out. Maybe this was just an educational pirate radio. I don't know. But ultimately, that has been the number stations. Again, there's no real theories because it is simply something that exists. And the main theory is that it's coded messaging, hidden in plain sight, because that stands to great reason. And many countries, or at least 2 in particular, have pointed out that it is in fact for that, at least for them. But I have always had a really deep fascination with these number stations. There are so many to talk about with such unique characteristics. Task Force, if you know a number station out there that you want us to listen to or react to, feel free to send them to us on social media at RedWebPod. But Fredo, any closing thoughts on number stations since you hadn't heard of these stations before?
Look, it's a cool mystery because it's real. Mm-hmm. In my mind, I'm 100% convinced it is real. Whether it was used in the past to do those, to relay messages to spies, etc., code breakers, all that kind of stuff. It's a real thing, and it's I don't know. I just kept waiting for the twist of like it's a big conspiracy. No, it's real. Like that's a twist of this episode. It's real.
It's so strange. Like I think the fact that it's real and out there is what and tangible is what makes it so fascinating.
So in our faces.
Right.
It's insulting.
It's the same, like I said, as Area 51. The fact that you know about it only makes it more intriguing.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me turn a blind eye. It makes me stare directly into the abyss and go, tell me more.
It's really cool, like the different nuances between different mysteries. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I could totally see a different mystery that's maybe a little bit more nefarious than this. I mean, how can you get more nefarious than this? But like even more nefarious than this, or maybe something that's, I don't know, supernatural, but it has a bunch of theories, right? This is more just like, no, this is pretty much straight up what it is, which is a twist in itself for an episode.
Yeah. I mean, now my mind is starting to wander as like, is this just, man, I don't know. Like, are they just controlling some huge servers of computers and data across the world by way of old technology? I mean, that'd be interesting.
It could.
You're just putting inputs into a computer without a keyboard. You're just doing it via sound from somewhere far away. I don't know. Man, Task Force, this one, because again, we don't have a huge amount of theories, would love to hear if there's anything that we didn't discuss theories-wise, what your thoughts, your takes on this are. Again, hit us up anywhere on social at RedWebPod, TikTok at The RedWeb, or email redweb@roosterteeth.com. With that said, Fredo, as we close, there's a fun fact. I realized this after we recorded the episode, but our 123rd episode, speaking of numbers, came out on January 2nd, 2023. So 123 came out on 1/2/23.
Oh, come on, man.
That was our numbers game.
That was it. That
2.5, 3 years in the making.
Does it? Yep. We did it. So when we sat down and conspired to make this, that was the plan.
Yeah.
That being said, beep, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep. If you know, then you know.
Goodbye.